You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey there, Young and the Restless fans. It's Soap Dirt on YouTube, and we have got an update. Kyle walks out on Summer this week. It looks like he's dumping her over her lies. Can you blame him? Let's talk about what happens in Kyle Abbott and Summer Newman's marriage this week and, figure out what's next for them. Is this marriage falling apart? If you haven't already, reach down, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our Young and the Restless updates, spoilers, casting news, everything you need to know. For a couple of weeks now, Summer has been lying to her husband. She has been talking to her mother on the sly, and in the Tuesday US episode, he is going to lay into Summer about her lies, and she's going to keep lying, and then he's going to confront her, and there are receipts to prove that she lied, and that's what's going to send him over the edge. So last week on Young and the Restless, Summer and Daniel were at the GCAC in Phyllis's hotel room where Summer has her stashed, and Kyle showed up at the door and was stunned to see Phyllis there, and he was really stunned to see that Summer was there and that Summer wasn't stunned to see Phyllis. That right there was very telling, and Kyle stormed off. Summer followed him home, and then we didn't see what happened with them, and then now it's like a day or so later, they're at the Abbott mansion, and Summer interrupts him, and he is telling her that he didn't sleep and he wants her to tell him the truth. And she tries to sidestep it, saying, oh, she's so happy that Phyllis is alive, and she's so happy that Diane isn't facing these charges anymore. But he's like, okay, but how long have you known that Phyllis was alive? And she lies. She actually lies to him and said, oh, the same day that you saw her alive, that's when I found out. And she keeps, just making things up. And Kyle is like, no, I don't think so. He, in fact, is looking back at all her recent behavior for the past couple of weeks, where she gets a text on her phone and then she runs out without explanation. And he doesn't think that this is the first time that she's seen her mom. And he noted that she didn't look shocked that her mom was alive when he walked in at the room at the GCAC. So he demands to see her phone. She doesn't want him to, but he looks through it, and sure enough, he finds the text between her and Phyllis from Phyllis's burner phone, and he is really upset, and she is asking him just, let's drop this, let's move past it, yada yada, but he's like, no. And now he knows that not only has she been lying to him, but he realizes that Daniel Romalotti was lying to cover for her, and she finally comes clean, and she says, I didn't want to lie to you. And he's like, okay, you didn't have to lie to me. You chose to lie to me. And she keeps making excuses. He thinks that Daniel was shielding her. He also then calls her on the carpet for leaving his mom in jail while she knew her mom was alive and had set up this scheme. He feels like, oh, you were just going to leave my mom to go to prison. And she's like, oh, no, I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to let it go that far. And she's like, besides, your mom's out now. She's like, oh, no harm, no foul. And Kyle's like, no. That is not how this conversation is going to go. And he actually thinks that Summer was the one who didn't want Daniel to tell anyone. He has figured this all out. So he basically says if Daniel hadn't come forward, his mom, Diane, would still be in jail, would still be facing these murder charges, and her mother would still be skating around free as a bird after having set up her mom. Summer, again, is like, oh, no, I wouldn't have let it happen. I wouldn't let it go that far. And he says point blank, you sacrificed my mother to save yours. And the thing is, she didn't sacrifice Diane to save Phyllis's life. You could almost see that. Life for a life. If Phyllis was bleeding to death and Diane was bleeding to death and she only had 1 pint of blood to save one of them, okay, it's understandable that she saves Phyllis. But in this equation where the choice is Diane going to prison for life and Phyllis being held accountable for lying and scheming with Jeremy Stark, well, that's chalk and cheese. She was definitely willing to sacrifice his mother to avoid her mother facing the consequences of her actions. And she just says, oh, I just needed a little extra time. It really wasn't going to happen like that. But he's not having it. He said, you watched my mom suffering. You watched me suffering over my mom, and you didn't care. And then she was pushing him away. Basically, watching these scenes for the past couple of weeks, Summer was kind of channeling Phyllis with her deception and all this. And Summer is distraught. She wants to make things right with him, but he doesn't see that is feasible. And can you blame him? Because she's been lying to his face for weeks, and she was clearly willing to let his mom, Diane, that he'd just gotten back in his life, go to prison for the rest of her life, because her mom's attitude is Diane hasn't changed. She came back and is conniving Jack. Okay, let's say that's true. Let's say that Diane is playing the long con and she is lying to Jack. Jack's a big boy. He can deal with that himself. It wasn't Phyllis's job to concoct a crime to get Diane out of their lives. If Diane truly hasn't changed and is truly the woman she is, then time would tell. Jack would figure it out. Diane wouldn't be able to hold her true nature in. And maybe that's still the case. Maybe there is this terrible flip side to Diane that we haven't seen yet in this iteration of her with Susan Walters back in the role. Maybe she hasn't changed. It seems like she's changed, and there's no proof to the contrary. So, we all knew this was heading there. Kyle walks out on Summer on Tuesday. Now, granted, they're at his family home when he walks out, so he's probably going to come back. The question is he then going to throw Summer out? We knew this was all heading there, and we have to wonder if Kyle is going to find a way to forgive Summer Newman, or is this a real split? The way that Summer is acting now, it's a return to the scheming Summer of old, when Hunter King was in the role. That's a version of Summer that Kyle really doesn't like. She was the one who bargained her kidney to save Lola Rosales to get a wedding out of Kyle. She was willing to let the woman that he loved die, even though she was the only kidney match, but only if he would dump the dying person and marry her. And that's what he had to do to get that kidney. And it was a really soapy, heinous plot. And that is kind of the level of scheming that Summer has been engaged in, frankly, for years. And to be fair, Kyle was not a good boy all the time. He would scheme and get up to no good with Summer as well. So I'm not, pot kettle. I'm not saying that he's completely innocent of this, but this is a return to the Summer of old that he does not like. So let's talk next about what is next for Kyle and Summer. But first, if you haven't already, reach down, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our Young and the Restless spoilers, news, casting changes, all the good stuff you need to know. So right now, Kyle has walked out on Summer. It feels like he isn't just walking out of the house. When you watch this scene, it feels like he's walking out on their marriage. It feels like a big deal. Of course, it's very complicated because his little son, Harrison, sees her as his mom. His real mom is in jail in New York. Remember her? Anyway, so is this marriage over? If it is over, what's next for them? We did notice that Chance Chancellor and Summer Newman had a little bit of a vibe while she was talking to him about the crime. He has been low-key seeing Sharon Newman, but Sharon's about to be focused on Nick Newman and this situation with Cameron Kirsten. So if anybody was going to get involved with Summer, the only one I feel vibing is Chance. What about Kyle, though? Audra Charles would definitely sink her claws into a hunky millionaire whose family owns a powerful business. Then there's Dr. Elena Dawson, who is generally a really sweet and genuine lady who was just done dirty by Nate Hastings. Maybe they could commiserate over lying partners, and maybe they might end up in a romance. There's not a ton of single ladies of an age that are compatible with Kyle in Genoa City right now. Let us know in the comments what you think. Are Kyle and Summer done for good? And if so, where do they go from here? Let us know your thoughts.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.